everybody. Welcome back to the Keep It Simple podcast. Today is episode 7. It's hard to believe that we're 7 weeks into this thing, but each episode has been amazing and unique. We have enjoyed it and have enjoyed receiving your feedback. Today's a special day. We have one of my closest friends for the past decade, I guess, Brooke Kitchens, on to have a conversation about authenticity and community. And Brooke is the director of student ministries, the youth pastor at Trinity United Methodist Church in Warner Robins, Georgia, has been there for a decade, which is almost unheard of anymore. And so we're going to lean into that some today on the podcast. Going to talk about Brooke's story, how in the world she ended up in Warner Robins, Georgia, and then the thread of authentic community that weaves through both her story and her work. So, Brooke, thank you for coming on. I'm so tickled to have you this morning.
Yeah, excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So let's start just kind of with you. Just kind of give a brief introduction. A lot of the folks in Middle Georgia know you, but in the past 7 weeks, we have picked up listeners from all over. And so there's a growing number of people who do not kind of know our tribe. So if you would just take a few minutes, kind of introduce yourself, explain to folks where you fit into all of this craziness.
Okay, so I'm Brooke. Like you said, I'm the youth director at Trinity. Been there 10 years, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I'm 36. Even crazier to think about.
Yeah.
You think you still feel 20 until you're around people who are 20, and then you're like, yeah, I'm not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing. Have a big family, very, very close to my family. Mm-hmm. 4 siblings. I have 3 nieces who I just love, and a little nephew. And I guess I fit into everything through the space between where we started doing co-leadership with a young adult college age ministry and did a lot of stuff with youth work together. So,
mm-hmm. And really, so
does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Really, my earliest memories of you actually, so you remember Jared Middleton put together that youth workers network thing, and Jared's mm-hmm. going to be on hopefully next week, so that'll be a cool tie. And mm-hmm. But Jared, I don't know, what year was that? Do you remember what year did you come to Middle Georgia?
2013.
And so Jared Middleton was doing youth work over in Dublin, which is about an hour away, maybe east of us, and 45 minutes or an hour. And Jared is a networker, right? So he's gifted in relationships. It's going to be fun. So a little mm-hmm. nerve-wracking to have him on because there's no telling what he may say.
You don't know what he'll say.
You never know.
I know you don't edit, but you might have to edit.
Yeah, I've stuck to my guns. And but anyway, he's a networker, loves Jesus. And so Jared put together this network of youth pastors, and he just started reaching out to people who were doing youth work kind of all over Middle Georgia, and literally all over Middle and South Georgia. And it seemed like a central location was at Perry, I think, was mm-hmm. where those meetings were. And so anyway, that was my first recollection of you, a little gangly thing that showed up, kind of fresh off the truck, and happy and peppy and mm-hmm. So encouraging and so anyhow, so through that, I guess we met, and you were doing student ministry at Trinity. I was at First. Michael Hernandez.
Yeah, so I just hit my knee. So you and I and Michael Hernandez and Terry Reynolds had met for a joint youth beach retreat that had been planned before I was hired.
Yeah, George was there. Yeah.
I was hired in April. And they're like, oh, by the way, in June, you're taking all these kids to Panama City and you're doing it with 3 other churches. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I met with y'all. And then through that, y'all had that thing that Jared started.
Yeah.
And so y'all invited me to join y'all with that.
I had completely forgotten about the joint beach trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like we would carpool, the Warner Robins people would carpool down to Perry for the networking. It was called Youth Workers. Was that what it was called?
I don't have any idea. Jared probably had some nifty name for it, but I don't
Yeah, he
remember.
probably did.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool how God works, because community is a gift to us. Community is a huge way, I think, in how God says, I love you, and him putting right people and the ways that he himself is in, like his spirit is in those people, and how he ministers to us and loves us through people. And it's just so cool how God worked, because I was called in youth ministry, very excited, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember my first night thinking, what have I got myself into? Like, I don't know, but God just, he just knows what he's doing. And so through that joint youth beach retreat that George had put into place, that God had led them to do, was such a huge equipping for me, because that was how I met you and Big Mike and Terry and Jared, and then through that, Charity, who is one of my best friends, who I'm going to be her maid of honor in December.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And so it all goes back to a joint beach trip, but it really goes back to God putting community in my life, and in a place where I didn't know anybody in Warner Robins, Georgia. And this ministry can be a very lonely place, which doesn't sound like that would make sense. But when you are the one in charge and you are the one doing all the time, it can be very lonely, because you're the point person and everyone's always coming to you. So to have other people who were doing what I was doing and being able to pour into me and encourage me when I really didn't know what I was doing, has led to, the faithfulness of God has led to 10 years of loving and pouring into kids and living life with students. So it's so cool how God chooses to work.
Yeah, there's so much in there. There's so much in there. The first thing is and we'll just spend just a second here. So talking about the loneliness, or whatever you want to call it, of ministry, until people are in it, they don't realize it. And the amount of feedback we've gotten just in 7 weeks or 6 weeks from people who are in the trenches, whether that be vocationally or volunteer wise, because volunteers are just as much in it as we are, right? They are. Oh yeah,
we can't do it without them.
They are invested, and the amount of feedback that I've gotten from people who are in ministry, vocationally and volunteer wise, who have been encouraged to realize, okay, these things that I'm thinking, or these things that I'm feeling, or what I'm experiencing is normal. Like, there's nothing the matter with me, or I didn't miss my call, or, kind of in that vein, to know that's normal. And that is where community comes in. And you touched on so many things. So Charity has been on. So the people who are faithful have seen and heard Charity now. And last week I had my friend Brandon on. And the reason I talk about that is Brandon and then Kathy Atkins, who will be on in a couple weeks. Those two have been the beginning of that community for me here. We made the big move from South Georgia out to the Midwest, and it was COVID, right? And so everything's locked down. Nobody's really getting together much at all. And then that releases, and you begin to look around, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I've got a whole community of people that I'm responsible for to lead and love. But then on the personal side, like where we were in our group of people, it's like, okay, I got to get busy and creating that. So, George, who was Whidden, who was before you at Trinity.
I love George.
I do too. He's amazing. it's hard for me to pronounce the name of their candle company. What is it?
Modero.
So if you're listening to this, you want to support a small family-owned Christian business and get amazing fragrances out of candles. Modero. Do you know how to spell it? You're the brains of this outfit.
Yeah, Modero.
Modero. They're in Albany, Georgia. You can look them up.
I think it's Modero Candle Co., like candle company.
Modero Candle Co. On our social media, you can find them through who we're following. But anyway, helpful plug for George, I hope. But so George was your predecessor. We had put together this joint beach trip. We always, and you still are, we're always about trying to get teenagers, Christians, teens together, because these kiddos are passing themselves. They're passing one another in the halls every day, and they don't know that they're on the same team. Like, they don't know that they're on the same side. And so our heart in that, for as long as all of us were together, was to do these events, to get these kids together where they realize, oh my gosh, you're in my second period class. And I had no idea that you were a believer too, you know, and that kind of, even if it's just eye contact in the hall and a kind of a knowing smile, you know, for them to know that there are other sincere Christians in the same boat that they're in is incredibly healthy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we had that beach trip set up. What I do remember about that were the T-shirts. Do you remember those T-shirts? I think the idea was probably good, maybe, but the shirts were like were they matches or sticks of wood?
They were matches.
Matches, and on the body of the matches was each church's name.
Yeah.
And the matches came together and there was a big flame. But do you remember the name of the deal?
Burn Together.
Burn Together. And I pulled that shirt out of that box. Legal disclaimer, we had nothing to do with the design.
We had nothing. But who did it was very excited about it.
Oh, yeah. But I just remember
I remember you were like, I don't care. I don't, however we want to do the shirts, I don't have any input. The only thing I will say is I do not want it to be a black colored T-shirt just because I don't, which you are today, but you're like, I typically, they're hot. We're going to be at the beach.
Yeah.
We're going to have those Gildan heavy cotton shirts, you know. So my preference is a light colored, maybe a beachy feel, something like that. They were black T-shirts.
It was the Gildan Ultra Heavy. I mean, that sucker felt like a cardboard box and black, and it said "Burn Together," which is a great theory, but great in theory, I think. But anyhow, it's funny.
Well, it's kind of like when you get into. We have our own jargon and our own language as Christians. Mm-hmm. It's like Christianese.
Yeah.
And so for a believer, that makes sense. But for someone who doesn't know Jesus, like, burn together my foot. I ain't like, they crazy. Like, I'm not doing that.
And that's what a lot of folks, I think, miss out on is the whole reason you print shirts. I mean, you want the students to have them and to remember the trip, but really more than anything, they're conversation starters. I mean, if they I know that you do too, but we put so much time and effort into designing those things and trying to get them right. 2 parts. Number one, so the kids have something to remember, you know, the trip and that, especially if it was impactful spiritually, but every bit as much trying to get it right so that they'll actually wear it to school or to a football game or to other things so that their friends will start to ask questions and it opens the door and gives them it's the same thing that we're doing. So you're wearing the Listen More shirt. That's a Simplify shirt. I've got on the original. It's the same thing that we do with our goods. You know, they're there. They exist for reminders for us, but also to start conversations. So, and I don't know if people have caught on to this or not, but all of our short sleeve, long sleeve, and sweatshirts, hoodies are $9.99 on the website right now. I haven't publicized that.
$9.99.
I mean, $10, man. And so
$10.
anyhow, if you're interested in any of that and supporting what we're doing or helping spread the word, head over to simplifyprojectco.com.
Get them while you can.
Yeah. So seven episodes in, that's the first plug of that, which is interesting enough. So let's get back to you. So you showed up 26 years old, 25 years old, 26 years old.
25, about to turn 26.
25, about to be 26. And
like in a few months, I would have been 26.
So lead us through, if you don't mind, kind of the years where, high school, where were you? College, where were you? How did you end up in Middle Georgia? More specifically, how did you end up at Trinity? What role did authenticity and relationship play in each of those phases and stages and seasons? How was God influencing you, growing you, stretching you, leading you? How did that play out?
Okay, so in the year of our Lord, 1987, I was born.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, in the year of our Lord. Right this moment, Charity Lucas is rolling her eyes and reaching for the power button.
Don't do it, Charity. Yeah, so I'm originally from Georgia.
Yeah.
From Twiggs County. Not deep Twiggs County, but Twiggs County.
Yeah.
And my mama loves Jesus, and we always went to church. I grew up at Swift Creek United Methodist Church. It's a little church. It's still there. And the summer before my senior year of high school, we moved to North Carolina, which is such just think about the summer before your senior year of high school. It's such a important time of your life. It's a big milestone. It's right on the cusp of major life transition. And we moved 2 states away. My dad worked at Brown and Williamson, so any of the Middle Georgia people listening to this will probably know it was this huge factory, and they merged with another big company. Only a handful of people were offered the job, and my dad was one of them, and so he took it. And so I remember being so upset, and I remember crying like on the drive up, like when we actually moved.
Yeah.
I just remember crying because I was so upset. And then that summer, I was hardly even there because my older sisters were married and moved out, so they were still in Georgia. My best friend from 5th grade was in Georgia, and I spent most summer at her house. Like that first summer in the new house, I wasn't even there because I'm just like, bump this. And then start high school. And that's another thing. I was homeschooled from 6th grade through 11th grade. And so the only year of public high school I ever attended was my senior year. And it was a new year. And so, but I loved it. I always said like I had all the fun stuff without all of the just get me out of here mentality. But when we moved, my mom's first thing was like, we got to find a church. And I remember I was the only one willing to go with her to church out of my family because everyone else was just like scared, I guess. Like Hope and Paige are like, we hate this. And my dad's just trying to get settled into work. And so I can remember going with Mom, trying out churches. And then we went to this one little church, and it reminded us a lot of our church back home. And we started going. They had a really amazing youth group, got really, really involved with that youth group, finished out high school, stayed local to do community college because, again, uprooted right before your senior year, it totally changed anything I had in mind as far as college. And like, we don't know the colleges up there. I was the first one out of my siblings to go to college. So it's like my parents, neither of my parents went to college. So we moved, and then you have this kid who needs to go to college. They're just trying to get settled, and they're like, we don't even know what to do, kind of. And so ended up doing community college to get my associates. And so since I was still local, I was still helping with the youth group.
Oh, cool.
So I would help the youth director kind of like as an assistant, almost like an intern, I guess. I mean, I definitely helped her. I would plan events and I would do things and I would help chaperone and all kind of stuff. So in and through that process, with us moving and us going on the very first mission trip I ever went to after I moved, that was when I was called into youth ministry.
Oh, wow.
So God used that move and the community he put in my life at that time in a way that literally has affected the rest of my life and my eternity. I mean, because when you're 18 years old called into ministry, you really start trying to figure out who God really is. Like, okay, I say yes, but what am I saying yes to?
Yeah.
I remember saying yes in it, but I didn't know what I was saying yes to. So then continue to help with youth ministry locally while I get my associates. Then I transfer to App State University. Go Mountaineers. Amazing school, beautiful campus. But I got plugged into Campus Christian Fellowship, which was a campus ministry. And in those years at App State, in that community of CCF is where I took total ownership of my faith.
Yeah.
I'd always loved God. God was never a question. And I really view that as like generational faithfulness. Like I heard someone say this, and so I want to encourage any Christians who you don't have the rock bottom testimony story and you can feel like it's not good enough. That is a testament of God's generational faithfulness.
Amen. Yeah,
to be raised in a Christian home is a blessing.
Yeah.
And to never doubt God's existence is a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is a huge gift. And so I had never, the reality of God was never really a question for me, but taking ownership of my faith for my faith, not because we went to church, not because I was in a youth group, not because mom sang in a choir, like it was mine. And that happened at CCF with Jim Musser and Mariana Musser, amazing couple, Grant Foster, Danielle Andrews, amazing people who really, really, really poured into college students. And college can be a very dark place, extremely dark, a lot of spiritual warfare in college. And so I always encourage my students once they graduate to get plugged into a campus ministry.
Yeah, it can be a dark place, but it can also be a light place. And that, that's one thing that might be, well, we'll finish your story and how you ended up to Middle Georgia, but help me remember because you know me best, I'll forget. But that's a great segue eventually into the space between. But I can't tell you how many students we graduated that we harped on. I mean, just beat them over the head with you. Please, in that first 6 weeks on campus, please try. Just visit. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's inconvenient. Just please try. Very few did. A higher number later in life, sometimes even after graduation and once they're in the workforce, would come full circle back and say, you know what, to the point that you bugged me, you tried your best to get me to go to a student ministry and I just wouldn't because it was uncomfortable. I didn't know anybody. If I could change one thing about my college career, it would be that I would have connected with a really solid Christian campus ministry, so so if you're out there listening to this, I know that you got a ton of kids that'll listen to this for sure. I'm not obviously in student ministry anymore, but if you are listening to this and you're college aged and you're in school on campus somewhere, or even if you're at a community school, find a local Christian college ministry and please give it a try.
Just try it. Try several.
Yeah.
Try them out. Try it. Go to as many as you need to go to.
Yes. So
because it can be a dark place, but it can, like you said, it can. For me, it turned into be one of the most enriching, light-filled, life-giving places.
Some of the
Absolutely.
most formational years spiritually, literally, truly of your life. Like
Truly.
if you get into a really solid, well-led, spirit-driven campus ministry in your freshman year, by the time you're like, I think about Wesley at UGA, you get connected to something like that, and you come out the other side of that, and you're ready. I mean, life's still life, but the equipping that goes on in places like that cannot be understated, I guess. So you're at App, you get connected, there's spiritual formation, you earn your degree.
Yep.
Yeah. So people, a lot of folks don't know this. The folks that are closest to our group, do, but you're the smartest of all of us. Like you're literally, I make a joke. It's always been a joke. You're the brains of the outfit, so when it comes to intellect and just aptitude, of our circle, you're without question the brains of the outfit. So you go to App, it's spiritually forming, but you also earn your degree. What was it like being the first of your family to earn a college degree? That had to have felt really good.
It was really good. I still remember. It's so funny how some things you just really remember. I remember graduation. I remember being so excited, which I get excited. Things make me. I'm an excitable person.
Yes, you are.
But I remember being so excited and being in that big convocation center, and Mama and Daddy and Hope and Paige were there, and I was texting them to find out like where they were, and I could find them in the stands, and they had sat kind of behind the stage, so when I walked up the ramp, they could see me. And I remember like waving at them, and then Chancellor Peacock, I remember like hugging him, and there's this picture of me like I grabbed his shoulder to like the thank you and go to in for a hug, and like my sister's like, you had like such a death grip on that man's shoulder, like you were so excited. But I was so excited to graduate, so I graduate, and a degree in secondary education. So I'm like certified to teach high school social studies, because again, I was called into ministry, but I was doing like the Brooke plan, like wherever I'll be, whatever church I'll end up, I'll just help in youth ministry. Like full-time youth ministry wasn't on the radar at all. I didn't, honestly, it sounds silly, I didn't know full-time youth ministry existed because I'd been in such small churches. It was always part-time roles or volunteer-led.
Yeah.
So I was just like, wherever I'll be, I'll do it. So I graduated with my degree, really excited, really proud of myself. And then I couldn't get a job. Couldn't get an interview, really stressed.
A teaching job then? I mean, you said,
Yeah, so I like graduate, and then, you're applying, because you get all these fairs ahead of time. You apply, and you're sending out your resume I just remember spending hours every day emailing out my resume and applying for jobs. And that summer I had one interview.
Wow.
And I just remember being really stressed out. And I mean, so stressed out. And I have TMJ, which is annoying. I clench my teeth when I sleep, so I have like a lot of pain in my jaw and like a lot of inflammation. It got so bad because I was so stressed, I couldn't open my mouth. I had to go get physical therapy on my face.
And for somebody that talks as much as you do, that had to have been excruciating.
It was horrible. And I remember having to go to get physical therapy on my face. And one of the guys I went to high school with, who was like the popular guy, he was the one having to do it. And it was like the most embarrassing. And I'm like, here's this guy. He went to school. He got his degree. Like, he's doing his job. And like, I can't even get a job and I can't open my mouth. And so it was just this moment of just being like so upset. But it was all, God knew what he was doing, totally knew what he was doing. And he had the people in place to lead me back to Georgia. So I was asked to be homecoming speaker at my little church I grew up in. So I came down for that. And then.
So 2 sisters were still living, they were married and living in Georgia.
Yeah.
So there was connection there.
Yeah. So I come down to be homecoming speaker, and it's going to sound really silly, but like they filmed the Vampire Diaries, a TV show in Georgia. And my sister's like, we can be an extra on the Vampire Diaries.
So that's something that some people know about you, but a lot of people do not. So you've been in a lot of movies, some cool movies.
Yeah, as an extra, as background. Yeah, it's really fun.
So we have been friends for years. I mean, I don't even know how many years we had been friends. And one day we were sitting in a group of people, probably at Space Between or something, and somebody said something about, was it the Hunger Games maybe? I don't know. And you were like, I was in that. And I was like, what? And you're like, yeah, I was in that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're like, oh, yeah. And then you went through the whole thing and pulled it up on your phone and found yourself. And you're like, there I am. And I'm like, oh, wow, you actually are in that. So
yeah. So they do a lot of filming in Georgia because of tax breaks.
Yeah.
And you can be an extra. You can be background, and it's so fun. You get to see how movies and shows are filmed. You can interact with pretty phenomenal actors and actresses. You get free food, which is usually pretty good. Tyler Perry, they feed you ribs at his studio.
That's what I'm talking about.
Even if you don't work that day, even if the scene's canceled, they still feed you and send you home, and they still pay you. And you get the paid. So I come down, I preach at the church. My sister's like, let's be on the Vampire Diaries, because she had done it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but how will I get home? Because Mom and Daddy had to go back home. And she said, we'll figure it out. And literally, I'm still here 10 years.
So you came down to preach homecoming at Swift Creek.
Yeah.
Your sister talked you into hanging out to be an extra on a vampire show.
Yeah.
And you never left. That makes perfect sense.
I never left. So
then how do you get from the vampire show to where you met us in student ministry?
Yeah, so I was staying with my sister. We did that, and then there was a lot of filming and a lot of shows. And so I was doing that because it was really fun, and I was making money because I was still trying to figure out what to do.
Were you applying for teaching jobs still, or no?
Yeah.
In Georgia or in North Carolina?
Well, I was still applying for North Carolina because I hadn't made like the move, like the full transition. But my sister was like, you know what? Why don't you just move in with us and just stay, and you can look for a job down here. You're not getting nothing up there, and things are going well. So she offered that to me, and it was crazy, but I just had such a peace about it, and I was like, okay, prayed about it. I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm just supposed to be here for now.
And that's so uncharacteristic, like knowing you very well.
Oh, I worry about everything.
Yeah, that is
overthink.
Not normal. Yeah, for you to say okay and actually do that is not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally not. I stew over everything. And I was like, okay. And then my pastor at my church in North Carolina, he sent me this thing. He's like, hey, there is a ministry event. It's called Summons to Ministry. It's at Epworth by the Sea. Since you're in Georgia, we're going to pay for you to go. We feel like you need to go to that.
I never knew
that. I'm like, okay. And
Epworth by the Sea is in
St. Simon's Island in Georgia.
St. Simon's Island, Georgia. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. But then Mom, and I had like an old 1995 Nissan Sentra GXE. It had at that point, it already had 200,000 miles on it. And I can remember my mom being like, I'm not so sure. We're nervous about you driving down there in your car. And you don't know anybody and blah, blah, blah. So the conference essentially organized for me to carpool with people from Macon that were going. I
Oh,
rode with
wow.
people I didn't even know to go
Now I could
down
see
there.
you doing that. I mean,
And
that is
yeah,
within your,
that didn't faze me.
yeah.
And I go to this thing and I leave it even more confused.
Okay. So I was expecting the epiphany at Epworth, but no.
No,
Okay.
I'm more confused because I'm like, I already know I want to do youth ministry because in college, youth ministry was solidified.
Okay.
But then they're talking about college ministry, and feel such a strong desire for college ministry. And I knew how formative it had been for me.
Yeah.
But youth and college don't mix. You got safe sanctuary guidelines, you got age. I mean, that you don't do both of those together. You do one or the other. So I leave it confused. Like, well, now I'm even more conflicted. And all the while I'm doing TV shows and movies. So I'm just kind of like, and I'm doing substitute teaching. And it's just all over the map. Like, God, what are we doing? And well,
So
I had met.
how long did that last? So from the time you came down to preach at Swift Creek until the time of Epworth and the confusion, are we talking about a few weeks? Are we talking about a few months? Are we talking about a few years?
A couple of months.
A couple
It was
months.
a few
Okay.
months.
Okay.
So I met Jay Tucker, who was a pastor at that event.
Who is actually going to be
doing Charity's wedding.
marrying Charity and Drew.
Yeah.
Because he was the campus pastor at Georgia Southern.
Yep.
And later the lead pastor at Bon Air.
Yep. So in a weird way,
yeah,
Jay helped lead me to Charity, which is one of my best friends.
Wow. How?
So I meet Jay. He asked for contact information and stuff with ministry things, blah, blah, blah. I don't know this. Apparently he saw something in me. He contacted
at Epworth?
At Epworth.
Okay, so you're confused.
In the dining hall.
So you're confused, but you have no idea that the Lord's working through Jay. Okay, I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm talking to him, and he sees something in me. And he contacts Trinity United Methodist Church, gives them my contact information. He said he knows that Trinity's looking for a youth director. He contacts them, gives them my info, and says, I found the girl for your position.
Wow.
And so I get an email from a church I've never heard of asking me to come in for an interview to be the youth director full time. And I remember emailing back and being like, thank you so much for contacting me. I'm gonna pray about it and see if I want to interview. And then within like 5 minutes, I emailed back and like, I'll come to the interview. Because it's like, as I sent it, I'm like, no, you need to go to this interview.
Yeah.
So I go to the interview, and then I get a second interview, and then I get hired.
So was that with Bill? Did Bill hire you?
Yeah, that was with Bill Bagwell. Bill is amazing.
He really is amazing. Yeah.
He apparently he told me this after the fact. But he told them if they didn't hire me, that because he had been appointed to move the following June, and he had told him like, if you don't hire her, I'm taking her with me.
Wow.
So he was really sweet, really supportive, really, really like fought on my behalf. Like, you need to hire her.
And the flip side of that, so George had an incredible opportunity to go home. So George is from Albany, originally born and raised down in that area, and had been commuting over the road back and forth. I mean, he was extending himself to places that at times were unhealthy, like depleting. And he had an opportunity open up to go back to Albany at a really solid church to do student ministry and be home, and so that happened. And then Bill's niece, Emily, actually filled in. She had just graduated from college or seminary, I think. And she came for a season because I remember doing some type of joint something with her, something that I'd already planned with George. And then you show up. And I was like, oh my gosh, you walked in that first time and happy and peppy and rainbows and unicorns, and you were all the way up. I mean, you were,
all the way.
If it was 0 to 10, you were on a 12. And,
oh yeah, I was ready.
You were all the things, and you came in, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how this is gonna go. So you start there at Trinity, and have you thought any more in any of that about, gosh, I've earned a degree in this, but now it looks like that is opening, so many times with young people. I say young people, college and career age people, we were just talking about this yesterday in the car ride over to Kansas City with a group of friends for a training event. And we were talking about how high schoolers, your senior year of high school, well-meaning adults begin to say, congratulations on graduation. Like, what are your plans? Where are you going to go to school? What are you going to major in?
And it freaks them out.
And so many kids, I mean, it goes back to so there's Christians who think, oh, my testimony is vanilla. Like, I don't really have a testimony because I haven't been on the jailhouse floor. And it's, to your point earlier, it's like baloney. Like, the fact that you have come through relatively unscathed, I mean, to be human is to hurt, right? And so there's going to be hurt, there's going to be hills and valleys, but to not have the jailhouse floor experience is a testimony. And then beyond that, when you get into this place where there are people, this is what we were talking about yesterday, there are people that when they're 7, 8, 9 years old, whatever, 10 years old, like they know what they want to be. They feel like they know exactly what they're supposed to do with their lives. And that doesn't change. I mean, it's not like, what do you want to be when you grow up? An astronaut, or whatever. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. And that never changes. I mean, their track is laid out, and what a gift. But then there's a greater percentage of the population that you get to high school, and you've experienced, we've talked about this a lot, but well-meaning adults, hey, congratulations, graduation's coming up. Where are you going to school? What are you going to major in? What are you going to do with your life? And kids are like, I
don't know.
They're like,
I'm not even comfortable calling to order a pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to know what I'm doing with my life?
Yes. And so then there's this pressure.
I won't even go to the dentist by myself. And you want me to know what to do?
And so there's this pressure, right? And so then kids, I keep saying kids, but young folks go to school, and then it's like this, whether conscious or subconscious, there's this pressure, like, I need to figure this out. And then they declare a major, and then they earn a degree, and then they end up working in a field that's not even close to whatever their education's in, because all the while the Lord's trying to lead, but they've got like the Brooke plan, they've got this plan. And so if you're listening to this, younger folks who are listening to this, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like
really
Wick,
don't.
My oldest right now is a freshman at MU here, University of Missouri. And I've been telling him for 2 years, you don't have to figure it out. Go work on your core curriculum. And when you get into your junior year of college, if you're still undecided, get a degree in business or finance or something that's relatively broad, that will equip you and keep your doors open, stay prayed up. And so you end up.
You don't have to have it figured out.
No, gosh, no. I mean, half the time I still don't have it figured out.
I was about to say, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
All right. Lord, what we doing today?
Yeah, you wake up every day and you're like, God, you got to show up. If you show up, I'll follow, but you got to show up, And but anyway, so you have a degree in teaching or whatever the degree is, education.
Yeah, secondary education, so high school.
Secondary education, but you end up in student ministry. Is there still a wrestling match in your head? Like, I'm doing this, but I want to be doing that, or my degree's in that. I need to keep trying this. Or was it like, this is the way the Lord's opened these doors? No more thought about that. It's like, I'm all in here. What was that like?
it was, I very much felt I was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
I felt a total peace about it. And I didn't feel this nagging in the back of me, like, you still need to apply, you still need to look at schools, you still need
Good.
to do all of that.
Yeah.
So it was definitely God working, because I just felt like, okay, this is right. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Maybe initially there was a little bit of like, what am I doing? Because I had this a degree and I'm not using it. And almost some guilt in like, my parents paid a lot of money for me to get a degree that I'm not using. But it's so interesting to kind of have those thoughts. And it was probably like 4 months ago, I was talking to my mom. I don't even know how we were talking. She was talking about, asking me about, do I think about going to app, and was that good for me? And I told her, like, it was so good for me. And in my spiritual formation and who I am, like, all of that happened there. And the learning that I got, that just, I definitely believe in furthering your education, whether it's collegiate or trade school or whatever, like, but continuing to go and grow is always a good thing. And it just helps shape and form you. But we just had this conversation about it, and she was able to speak into the fact, without me even talking about it, but like, don't feel guilty that you're not doing what your degree is in, because you're doing what God called you to do. And we helped be a part of that, because going to app was a part of that. And so that's cool. Cause you have these things like, man, I probably should pay my parents back.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, but I'm in ministry and I don't even make enough to pay my parents. My parents back.
Yeah. So building off of the app idea and going back to this idea of the formation that happened in those years. So the four of us, me and you, Michael Hernandez and Terry Reynolds, were we at Cheddar's? If I got that right in my brain, we met for lunch.
Olive Garden.
Olive Garden, of course it was. I don't even I don't even use the word hate, but I hate the Olive Garden.
I love Olive Garden.
No wonder I tried to make it Cheddar's in my brain. And geographically, for those that don't know, those places are pretty close together in Warner Robins. But anyway, so the four of us end up at the Olive Garden, to try to plan this joint beach trip, right? But instead, literally the whole lunch is about
college ministry,
college and career age ministry. And literally from that lunch, which we thought we were meeting to talk about a joint beach trip, literally from that lunch, the space between was birthed. I mean, like, we walked away. The timing of all that was so interesting, because earlier that summer, I'd led our group to Big Stuff camps down in Panama City. A guy named Reggie Joyner was doing a breakout for youth pastors and adult volunteers. In that breakout, he was sharing statistics about the number of high school graduates. I still remember it was 86%. 86% of high school seniors walk away from a life of organized faith at high school graduation. And of that 86%, only 33% returned to a life of organized faith, and it's after the birth of their first child.
Yeah.
So there was this gap in the sidewalk, which I don't know if you even know this, but I almost named that ministry The Gap in the Sidewalk.
I feel like you had told me
which
that
would have been
before.
Incredibly dumb. But there was this gap in the sidewalk. There was this gap in the sidewalk between high school graduation and a 30-something year, 20, late 20s, early 30s having their first child.
Yeah.
And I remember in that moment, like, sitting there in that room in freaking Panama City listening to Reggie, thinking, what are we doing? Like, we're spending every ounce of all that we are to try to disciple kiddos, only to get them to this place, and then they disappear, and 50% of them will never come back to the church or an organized life of faith. So that happened that summer. And right on the heels of that, or the next spring, winter, whatever the timing was, is when
spring.
we end up sitting down trying to figure this. And in that time, at first we launched a standalone college and career deal, which was rough. It was so rough. We couldn't figure it out. We were trying to make it work. And, man, I remember we would have youth group from 5 to 8 p.m. And then we had an hour to flip the room and get everything cleaned and reset. And then the college and career kids came at 9. And we were together from 9 to 12. So youth, like ministry, was basically, so after having 2 services that morning in Sunday school, so early service, Sunday school, late service, hustle home, eat, change clothes.
It's like a 15, 16-hour day.
Come back, youth at 5, and you're done like the last college career person leaves at midnight. And we did that for months and months, just trying to figure out, gain traction. And then we meet to plan this thing, and from that, the space between is birthed. And so what we found out in that lunch was that we had these pockets of college career age people who were local. And we had
none of us had enough.
No, yeah, we had 6 or 8, and y'all had 6 or 8, and each place had between 4 and 10 people in that demographic, and none of us had enough to gain the traction to really get going. And so we pulled them. We put everybody together, and all of a sudden, then we've got 24 to 40, depending on the night. I think it was in that time. Maybe we moved it to Thursday nights. And when
we decided to combine and all help lead it, we started meeting on Thursday nights, and it was such a sweet time. That was good. That was, the community there was so cool, because for when you serve in ministry, wherever you're at, you're not necessarily filled there, because you're on and you're working. Right. And for me to be as fresh and new in youth ministry as I was, and then to help co-lead the space between, which was God giving me the desires of my heart. I went to Epworth. I'm like, I want college. I want youth. I know I'm doing youth, but I like college. Like, how is this going to work? And then I'm sent to Trinity, where I'm doing youth, and then I meet you guys, and then it's like, oh, but you can do college too. But the space between was this place where, for me, in a new everything and just trying to figure out what I'm doing, that was where I was refilled. That was where I was learning and growing, so that I could give my very best to my kids, to my youth students, and so that they could have the community that they needed. And so that our college kids could have the community that they needed. So God just uses community to build community, and to build community, which is really, really cool.
Staggering to think about. Yeah. And I had not considered, so that was at our place in our student center. Until you just said that, I hadn't thought about maybe the impact or the helpfulness of it not being on your campus, or like for Big Mike or Terry, or later, there was this kind of consistent influx and outflow of leaders. But for you all to be able to get off of your campuses and on into another space. And so we rotated, teaching series. So I'd teach a series, you'd teach a series, Michael would teach a series, Terry would teach a series. And as long as we weren't the ones teaching, it really was an opportunity to be in the room and not have to be at the front of the room, not have to be on, which goes back to filling some of that void of loneliness in ministry, to where you did have time to be refilled, and you could, the pitcher was refilled, so then you could go on Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, and pour out again. So I had not thought about that until this moment.
Yeah, well, I really, really think one of the reasons why I have been at Trinity for as long as I have been is because of the community that helped me be the best that I could be, so I could be the best I could be for my kids. Because so many people in youth ministry, the reason why they quit is burnout. They can't, it's too much. And they're doing it alone. And I had built in people consistently pouring into me and having sincere, authentic community and true worship and learning and growing, like really helping foster my relationship with Jesus. And so all of that I was constantly giving, I could constantly give because I was constantly getting it. And then that has been so good for my students.
And you're a little bit of a unicorn, which I'm sure you like because you love rainbows and unicorns, but you're a little bit of
unicorns.
I know. You're a little
I have
bit
a collection.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware. You're a little bit of a unicorn in that you've been in the same place, overseeing the same student ministry for a decade. And I don't know what the numbers are anymore. I haven't looked at it, in years, 3 years at least. But the last time I saw any type of statistic, it was like the average tenure of a youth pastor in the United States is 18 months, 18 to 24 months, I think. That's the average. And, in a sample size of 11 years at first, I saw that in other local churches and working with other student pastors and stuff. For the longest time, I was the old guy, the one that had been around forever. But now you are that person.
Yeah, now I'm the old guy.
So what is that like, kind of taking on that mantle? Who are you pouring into, coming alongside, kind of giving back? The Simplify Project is all about, cultivating authentic community wherever you find yourself. And I know that, and I'm thankful for, so like Angela, Carol, Melanie, you always a little nervous to start listing people. I know Craig, when you served under Craig, was so influential and just incredible in your life. So it's, we are poured into. Just talk a minute about the importance of authenticity and community, and then who are you pouring into? Like, who are you now trying to model that for and coming alongside in ministry?
Yeah, so, definitely always my students, my 6th through 12th graders, for sure. Especially now more than ever, it's the changes in society in the past 10 years have been just crazy. Like the way I did youth ministry 10 years ago does not work.
The past 3 years.
Yeah. And so it's definitely a whole different category of people. But people always need to know they're seen, they're loved, they're valued, they have worth, and that Jesus is crazy about them. And so that constantly trying to pour into the kids that come in and out of the doors, for sure. But then there's some who have graduated out of the program, but that are still kind of local, and still kind of figuring out. Some are in college and some are doing work and figuring that out. And so I want to kind of keep away from naming names.
Sure.
But there are people who I have felt strongly like, these are some young women that you need to really be focusing on and trying to make a point of spending more time with them and encouraging them, because it's kind of like they feel a little lost. But I see the way God is using them and the good in that, but just trying to focus on that, because it's kind of interesting, because your community does kind of shift around. So for so long, some of the people in the space between before they graduated out because of our closeness in age. Like those were my people, and they're still my people, but our life situations have changed. And so like the people that you're around, like I'm not around Mindy as much as I used to be, or like all of the people in that category. So the ways that Mindy and I feel like would pour into each other, not that we don't anymore, but the ways that we do that, I feel like God's put new people in those areas. Yeah. Probably, she could probably say, I can't speak for her, but she could probably say the same thing. But there are some young women in my church or that I know through ministry, and those are the people now that I'm trying to really focus on.
And we got to get Mindy on. She sent a text the other day, some feedback from the episodes and stuff, and I was like, we got to have you on. Would you be willing to do that?
Oh, she'd be so good.
Oh, she's amazing in every way, but it was just crickets. So, Mindy, I know you're going to watch this and listen to this because it's Brooke. Respond to my text. Let's set a date.
Mindy, you have to do it. Mindy, you'd be so good.
You got to give the
as a teacher and the way she loves her kids. Oh man,
it's Mindy Lou. I mean,
yeah,
right. So you said you wouldn't name names. I will. I think about like Jeremy Jenkins. You know,
well, he is one of the ones
up at Hinton, and just pouring himself out, giving. He's seen that modeled. He's been loved well and encouraged. I think about Johnny Bridges.
Super proud of Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny. Both of them two together coming alongside helping in youth ministry has been like awesome.
Yeah, and those are people that are products of that combined. I mean, the thing to me that's so beautiful about that is at different seasons, if you ask them if they had a home church, I'm sure they would say one of our churches. But really, it's the community that formed them. It's this coagulation of all of these people, Christians, from different churches, different backgrounds, different experiences, different walks, who have consistently, not like a burn together, like a match, quick and short, but this elongated pouring into and this consistent love, encouragement, at times edification and correction, and just all the parts and pieces that go into authenticity and real relationship. And like Johnny, I think about Johnny, he's helping lead worship with you all on Sunday mornings, but he's working full time for charity at the Brookdale Resource Center.
And then he helps on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights with youth. Yeah,
so I mean, there's a person, not to blow Johnny up, but just, my point is we can always, no matter where we're at in this process, no matter if we're in vocational ministry or volunteer ministry or no formal ministry with a church at all of us should be pouring into somebody somewhere at all times, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. And no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you do for a living, you should be pouring into somebody at all time. And that really is what the Simplify Project is about. It's taken us 6 years to get concrete on that, to get concrete on this idea of giving and pouring and loving well, and in spite of ourselves and in spite of others.
I'll name 3 names.
Okay, Brooke.
2 of them have been named. Jeremy Jenkins.
Yeah.
Who was in the youth group, in my youth group.
Yeah.
And he went on a mission trip with us. He had barely come to youth, and I'm like, "You're going on this trip. I signed you up." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I signed you up. Don't worry. I talked to your mom."
And so those of you that don't know, Jay is a mountain of a man.
Oh yeah.
He is a large human being.
We call him Jer Bear.
Jer Bear. He's a big old teddy bear, but he's
a huge teddy bear.
He played college football, and I mean, he's a tall,
big dude.
Yeah, offensive lineman, big guy.
But he was in my youth group, and then he was part of Space Between, and then he started helping with youth ministry. And that first trip we went on at Hinton, now he works full-time at Hinton.
Yeah.
Because he started working there over the summers, and now he's got a full-time job. And so
Yeah.
I totally see God at work in that community.
Yeah.
And he's not local anymore, but I think the world of Jeremy and still try to serve him in the best that I can and love him the best that I can. Johnny, again, as you said.
Hinton, not to sidetrack you, but just to throw this in there, Hinton has been holy ground. That has been a sacred space.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about community. Like we are our family. I'm where I am now through relationships from Hinton. And that's where Jay's working. I mean, he's full time there now, which is
he's
really
full time.
Really sweet. So didn't mean to interrupt you. So from Jeremy to
no,
Johnny.
You're right
then.
though. You're right though. I mean, Hinton is so special. It's so interesting. There's all of these little pockets of community that intersect, and it's because it all points back to the greater body. And like we're getting it right, like where the church is actually being the church and actually being community.
Yeah.
All those places intersect, and it's just the body at work.
And like from Hinton, we met Ashley Waldroop, who through that we met Gabe Barrett, who through, you know what I mean? Like once you open that and start to pause and back up and open that box, it's like all of these, or Mike Horn, who we have to have on.
It's like that bulletin board with all the strings.
Yeah, and A Beautiful Mind, that Russell Crowe movie, A Beautiful Mind, in the back, in like the weird garage back in the woods, and they open it, and that's all the stuff.
Well, I wasn't thinking that exactly, but yes.
I was. It's fascinating.
Oh, okay.
Because it's relationships. I mean, when we get out of ourselves long enough and turn our focus outward instead of inward, and step back and look at the story of God and the story of us, like what God's up to and how God works through relationships, is staggering. I mean, today could be the day that you meet a person that you're going to be friends with for the rest of your life. And through that connection, who knows what God may do. I
mean, it's all about relationships.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, okay, so sorry. Actually, I'm not. So Johnny, So Johnny.
So John Boy.
Yeah, old John Boy.
So he was in your youth group.
He was, yeah.
And our groups did stuff together. So I've known him since he was 15.
Adam Sylvester brought him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was part of Space Between. Then he moved back home. And so I found out he was back home, sent him a text message like, hey, come to Space Between. I'll see you Thursday. He started coming out to Space Between. I was doing interim youth worship director, leader. Full disclaimer, I know nothing of music.
But you can sing like a bird.
But I love worship, and I can sing. Yeah. And so I was kind of the interim worship leader, and I was like, hey, you want to come and play guitar with us? And so he started playing guitar again and started leading worship, and then that led him into helping with youth ministry. And so it's been really cool to see him utilize his gifts of worship and I guess, I don't know if this is the right phrasing for it, but the gift of socialization. The gift of noticing people, engaging with people, being there. Like, there are so many young men in our youth ministry that he has just been able to connect with, and like him and Jeremy between the two of them were able to reach every guy because of their different interests and stuff. And so that was so cool to watch the past few years. But that's been really cool to see him grow, and like the way he helps is phenomenal. And both of them help with Kids in Our City as well, our kids ministry. It's like an enrichment ministry that we meet the elementary school children in our community. And then Anna Huff.
Oh yeah.
Who was your niece?
She is.
Who was in my Trinity's youth ministry, went to UGA, graduated. She's back home doing nursing school, and she reached out, hey, can I help with youth ministry? I'm like, yes, you can. And and she is so busy with nursing school. Like nursing
Hmm.
school is so hard and so time consuming. And she's not able to come every week because she literally can't. But she is there so much as she is able.
Hmm.
And she's just pouring in
Yeah.
to our kids. And like they're all showing them like you can live a life that is a good life and a fun life and a cool life, but a life that is all about Jesus. And they're like,
Jesus. Yeah.
my kids are seeing that every week through these young
Lived
people,
out.
which is
Yeah. And
so cool.
Anna, of course, I've known Anna since she was a little girl. She is, my niece. And I'm not saying
Hmm.
this just because she's my family. She's incredible.
She's
Uh,
incredible.
this past summer
So
was
solid.
we went on an extended family beach trip. Our larger family all went, and it was amazing. It was a blessing. I had 2 days, I think, that Anna and I just kind of hung out on the beach talking, and to hear her heart, to hear the
Hmm.
growth in her, as a woman, as a Christian, the way that she's processing things, what Jesus is doing in her life. It
Hmm.
truly, my time with Anna truly was the highlight of that vacation for me.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
cool.
and to
She's
know
just like,
then,
you just want to be around Anna,
oh yeah, 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 she
you
she is
know?
magnetic in that way. But
Yeah.
so thank you for pouring into her so consistently for so long.
Yeah, I
um,
love
I
Anna.
could I could hear you in her, strands of, kind of your theology and the way that you approach ministry.
Hmm.
So from our family, thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
But
love Anna.
Anna, yeah, Anna, if you're listening to this, John Boy, if you're listening to this, Jay, if you happen to catch this, keep on keeping on. Like, you got a whole network of people who believe in you and love you.
Hmm.
And are rooting for you. We're proud
Oh,
of
yeah.
of
So
you,
proud. So proud of y'all.
and it's dicey to start listing names.
Yeah, because I don't want it to turn into like,
No,
because
we
there's
could be here.
definitely
Yeah,
other people for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. We could
But
be
also
here for
sometimes,
a long time talking about those that we're proud of.
yeah. But yeah, I would say I will list those three names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how is the space between now? Tell me about that. So, it's interesting, the ebb and flow, the seasons of ministry. Um,
Hmm.
we were called, we were moved out of Middle Georgia, which was hard, right? So that was, you talk about you moving to North Carolina your senior year. We moved the boys here.
Yeah,
um,
that
Wick
was
was going
hard.
into his junior year. Zeke had 1 year of middle school. He had eighth grade, I guess. And um, but just to leave out of there, and all the depth and all of the relationships and family and friends who are like family. Um, and I don't guess, I suppose it's selfish. I didn't really think through the ramifications that would have as far as the space between specifically. Um,
That's not selfish.
I just didn't think through it. I don't know that you got to be obedient. I don't know that the result would have been different, but I didn't think through that. So how is the space between now? I know it's at Trinity. Is that right?
So now we meet at Trinity. It's kind of interesting. I guess I'm like the Lone Ranger. You know,
Oh, wow.
for so long, the beauty of the space between was that it was shared leadership,
Hmm.
um, which was good in a lot of different ways. You know, it was a conglomeration of personalities and ideas and perspectives that were able to constantly be on rotation. So there was no one set way, which is good for people who are college age and young adult trying to figure it out and needing to see different ideas and different vantage points. And
Hmm.
so to have a rotation of all in line with the same ideas but different ways of approaching was beautiful and healthy, and healthy for us as leaders, because that was a place where we were being refilled, so we weren't always at the front of the room. But, there's just been changes in leadership with that, and life changes and people moving. And the way it's just kind of shaken out is where it was always 4 or 3 people leading. Now it's me. It's just me. So that has been different for sure and interesting. But an opportunity to try to give it back to the group and really equip them to not just be kind of takers, but to be a part of what the leadership of that group is. So I think that part has been good. And I think COVID definitely hit everything, but with Space Between it, our numbers are definitely smaller than like what they were before COVID, for sure. But I will say that group, it is a smaller group, but it is very tight. And it's been cool to see how God has worked, because in that group, there are 4 people who moved to Warner Robins for work. And they didn't know anybody, and they came to Space Between, and now those people are like so tight. Their friends have come from Space Between. Wow. Because they sought out a ministry. And so like their community in this new city where they work is because of them coming to Space Between. So that has been really cool. And then to see them invite people is cool.
Which is the career side. So often I think college career gets packed together because you're trying to cover a demographic from like 18 to 26. But really, usually when people say college career age ministry, what they're saying is, college ministry. But to hear that there is that career thread, it's people who have, come out of college and are in the workforce or gone and earned a technical certificate or certification, which I am 1,000% for, and gone into the workforce. It sounds like there is a career thread in that ministry, which I would have to think is healthy.
Yeah, there's a big career thread.
Yeah,
for sure. And so that is cool.
Yeah,
that's been going well.
Yeah. So I end every episode with a question, except for Gabe's. I forgot. Sorry, Gabe. But I end every episode with a question. How do you keep things simple? So day in, day out, I know you wear many hats and you're pulled in a lot of directions, seemingly every day. A lot of days you run out of daylight before you run out of things to do. How do you keep things simple?
One of the things that I do is I work backwards. And what I mean by that is for each day, I look at the overall day, because in ministry, every work day for me is different, because programming is different. And so I will look at my day and say, okay, what time am I done today or tonight? What time will I be finished tonight? And then I'll look at that point, and then I'll work my way backwards so that I'm not working 12 hours every day, which you can easily do. Like, okay. And sometimes you just have to work more than 8 hours, but I try to say, okay, back it up to 8 hours and let that be my start of when I have to be in the office. Doesn't mean that I'm not doing ministry, because the other morning as soon as I woke up, I was emailing about shirts, and I did that for 2 hours, working out shirts for a retreat. And then I was in the office for 8 hours. So, but I try to work my way backwards. So that way I try to incorporate mini Sabbaths in every day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's really hard for me to get a 0 day. But if I can incorporate a mini Sabbath in every day, it really, really helps me out.
What does that look like? What does that include?
I like to do the Lectio 365. I don't know if y'all have heard of that, but I really like to do that in my Read Scripture app. And so just like my my worship Devo time. Taking an hour to drink my coffee,
No kidding. That's the realest thing you've said the whole episode.
But just trying to take that time for me, and where I don't have to be on and I don't have to be in front of anybody, and I can still be at the house and take it easy before I know it's about to just get crazy town.
Awesome.
So I do that every day. I look at what time will I be finished today, and then what time does my official, and that doesn't mean that I'm not working, because ministry is a way of life. It's not work, it's a way of life. But
believe me, I know.
But when it comes to like when I need to be at the church and in office and that sort of thing, work my way backwards, and then, okay, so I have this much time just for me. And this is where I'm going to spend time with God, and worship is where I'm going to do what I need to do. And so it's not just this constant, it never ends sort of thing.
Awesome.
I think that's one of the biggest ways I do it.
To keep things simple.
Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. If you can't get a full day, if you can't get a Sabbath, to create that, to be intentional, to create that space and time to get along with God, to stay in your rhythms, to allow the Spirit of God to refill you so that you've got something to pour. All of that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I mean, we could do this. I could do this the whole day just about. So, but thanks.
Oh, yeah.
I know that my expectation is this will probably be one of the most listened to, watched episodes that we do, because you are so good to people and have been for so long. And
hopefully when people hear this, they are encouraged in some way. I don't want my story to be like, man, she just talked about herself. But God has been so good and has blessed me with amazing parents, with a dad who has been so selfless in the way he's lived, a mom who has been so selfless in the way she teaches, and that community and family was so important to me literally since birth, that I've just always tried to be family to whoever you can meet. And so be family to people. Like, if you're going to take anything away from this, be what you always loved or treasured about what you had in family, or what you wanted in family that you didn't get. Like, be family to people, because that's being Jesus to people. And lives are changed.
Through relationships.
So, all about relationships. So thank you so much for letting me be on and talk away.
Yeah. All right. We will talk to you soon. I love you. Thank you. Yeah. See you.
You're welcome.